All right, so welcome everybody. I just want to introduce myself real quick. I'm Carrie. I'm your president for the Sterling Downs Neighborhood Association. And I'm sorry I missed many of you at National Night Out, but I heard it was a rockin' super cold event, super blustery event, but really glad that everybody's here. So we have two parts to tonight. We have some folks who are joining us, Ethan and Brent, who are going to talk about a new development project that's up for consideration. So as always, we want you all to know what's going on in the community. And this is a chance for you to just learn more and for them to get some input. So I'm going to turn it over to the two of them to do their presentation and for you all to ask some questions. And then we should have Councilmember Latimerlo, who represents our district, joining us closer to 7:30. So do you want to come on up, Ethan? And then just watch your step. But you should be set. And then let me pull up your presentation is here. So let's share your screen. And so now everyone should see this. We'll close this. And you should be good. Is that good?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So what is it? Select.
Is that good?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay.
There we go. And it's like it's gonna flip. Right?
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. Can everyone online hear me? I don't know if they can speak, but
They can.
I'll just assume that if I'm speaking loudly that they can hear me. How's everyone doing? My name is Ethan Warsh. I'm a director of development with BioMed Realty. And so thank you guys very much for adding me to your agenda tonight. I really appreciate it. Like Carrie mentioned, BioMed Realty is the owner of a property over in an area we call Island Park, but off of Island Parkway, directly adjacent to the Belmont Sports Complex. We've been working with the community located over there. We've been working with the city. We've been working with other jurisdictions to craft a project for consideration. And part of that process, obviously, is coming out to the greater Belmont community just to let them know what we're proposing, and to the extent you have thoughts on it, to listen to what you have to say. So with that, I'm just going to jump in. This is a relatively informal presentation. I'm just going to go through it. I'm going to describe the BioMed. I'm going to describe the project. I'm going to go through some pictures, and then I'll just open it up for questions. So BioMed Realty, we are a life science developer, owner and operator of life science properties. We're actually the largest privately owned life science real estate developer, owner and operator in the world. And as you can see on this map, we are located within all of the major life science clusters in the world, which are really happen to be in the United States. And so we're in obviously the Bay Area. The Bay Area represents the second largest of our markets. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. We're headquartered down in San Diego. San Diego is also a relatively large life science market driven by the Salk Institute and UCSD. Our largest portion of our portfolio is in the Boston Cambridge market. That is the largest life science cluster in the world. In addition to that, we have a presence in Seattle. We have a presence in Cambridge, United Kingdom, and we also recently expanded to Boulder, Colorado. But like you see here, San Francisco is the second largest of our portfolio, and we've been in San Francisco for a long time. So here, I just want to introduce you to some of the projects that we have in the Bay, some of which you probably may have driven by. So I'm just going to start. So with this map, we're hovering over Angel Island, looking south, just to orient you. So downtown San Francisco in the foreground here. So we have projects in Brisbane. We have projects in South San Francisco. Moving down towards Belmont, we have projects in Foster City. So the Illumina project, which sits directly at the bridge, that's our project. We also have projects in San Carlos, in Redwood City, And then crossing over the bridge, we have a number of sort of Southeast Bay projects, including in Newark, Hayward, so Pacific Research Center.
Sorry, can I just admit that person?
Yeah.
I just want everybody to come on in. Okay, go ahead.
Newark and Hayward. And then one of our newer campuses is coming all the way back up. It's in Emeryville, which really is kind of the center of life science for the East Bay, largely driven by UC Berkeley and the labs there. All that to say, we've been in the Bay Area for a long time. We're very committed to the Bay Area. We are seasoned Bay Area developers, and we're excited to be in Belmont. Oh, sorry. There we go. So that's BioMed. I'm happy to answer any additional questions about BioMed later on. But just jumping to the property now. So this is showing the site that we purchased and that we're talking about today. And so just to acquaint you here, you can see the Belmont Sports Complex off to the right and 101 directly to the right of that. And we're looking south. And so you can see the Oracle campus sitting over here. So BioMed does own everything that you see in this white dotted line and the white solid line. Some of those buildings are built already, right? Those were built and occupied by Oracle. But so what we're here to talk about today are the buildings that are in the buildings that we're proposing, but the portion of the site that's surrounded here in the solid white line. And so this is the project. So right now we're just hovering directly over it. This is a site plan view of the project. So the project that we're proposing comprises three different buildings, what we're calling building 1, building 2, building 3. All of these are life science buildings, typically for, conducting R&D. In addition to that, we're proposing a parking structure to support both this building 1 and building 2. And as you'll see in the images later, building 3 sits on top of its own parking structure. And then in addition to the buildings, we're proposing what's called out here on plan as public amenities. And so as part of all of our projects, especially these types of campuses that we develop, it's really important that we be providing really high quality amenities. It's what lets us stand apart from our competition. It's what allows our tenants to attract employees, high quality employees. There's obviously a lot of options in these, in this economy for different life science companies. And so these are important. And so you can see a large public amenity here along at the bottom of the parking structure, in addition to a small cafe space here at the bottom of what we're calling building 3. In addition to that, a big part of the project is all of these shoreline improvements that we're making. And so I'll show you in some slides later on. Obviously this site sits right along the O'Neill Slough. It's an area that is, I'm sure you guys know better than me, is really extremely popular with walkers, with bikers. The sports complex itself is obviously a massive draw, not just for Belmont, but other regional users. And so it's a pretty busy sort of recreational space. Right now at this site, these two, where you see parking, building 1 and building 2, those are dirt lots, right? And so this has been for a very long time, sort of a missing tooth in the trail network. And so what we propose here is to not only fill the missing tooth, but to fill it with what will become really some of the highest quality segment of trail in this part of the Bay.
Sorry, 2 questions. You mentioned a cafe, you meant open to the public?
Both of these areas, all of our amenities in our projects are typically open to the public.
Because Oracle has all kinds of cafes and stuff that are not open to the public. You can see them as you walk by the trail.
Yeah.
And then for parking, I mean, that dirt lot is, ugly in a dirt lot, but it's where everybody parks for soccer and baseball games. Is that going to be open to the community to still park there for games?
Yes. Yeah, so we have an agreement with Belmont to provide 40 spaces starting at 4 p.m. and 40 spaces starting at 5 p.m. Right now, obviously, the dirt lot's just open. When we build this parking structure, rather than propose shared spaces and say, we'll open the gates to the community at 4 p.m., but until then, you're stuck in your small surface lot. We are proposing as part of this project to build 80 dedicated spaces for the sports complex users, with access to, obviously handicap spaces and also EV charging stations, and to have those spaces be on the first levels of the garage. So you're not having to go up 7 levels or whatever and then come down. And in terms of the amenities and keeping them public, it's something that like what's important for us with these types of campuses, and part of the reason that we think they're a draw is that we're trying to create a place, right? We're trying to create a place that people want to come every day to go work. And so by having the amenities open to the public, it means there's a greater chance that these are really going to become real places, right? That the tenants, when they go down to grab lunch, are going to feel like they've actually left their office and are going to a real cafe, a real restaurant, rather than the cafeteria that's closed to the public, which is, I guess there was a time and place where that was popular. It's not how I would prefer to get lunch, but, and so we think that that's sort of the right move, but we also recognize that we're, you know, and through everything that we're proposing here, we do recognize that we are coming into an existing fabric, we're coming into an existing community, and we don't want to be a spaceship that lands. You know, we do want to be something that, to the extent possible, can be seen as an amenity, can be seen as a positively contributing improvement to this site and to the sites we develop. So this is just, you know, a pretty picture really. And so this is looking back west, it's sort of looking, I think, more or less at St. Mark's Church, like right, sort of dead center, right? Like over the highway and, you know, through some trees a little bit, but that's the direction so you can see building 1 here in the center, building 2 to the right of that, and our proposed building 3 to the left of that with that garage at the base that I mentioned. And then you can see the garage behind.
So what are the new buildings?
All 3 of those plus the parking structure are new. Let me go back. Oh, geez. Sorry, hold on. So here you can see there are 2 existing buildings that we are currently in the process of rehabbing so they can be used for life science use. And so construction is underway and almost complete there. There's an existing parking structure that serves those 2 buildings. And actually under where it says building 3, can you see my cursor up there?
Yeah.
Right under that,
I can't see this.
so right where my cursor is, there actually is an small existing commercial building that is it's a different vintage than these 2 back here. It's from a different time. It looks different. It's much smaller. It's much older. I think maybe Oral-B had been there like way back in the day, if you guys are familiar with that. And then at building 1, where it says this site here is vacant, these are dirt lots. And so we would be proposing for that 1 building to tear that small building down and replace it with what we're showing.
You know, because we also have a number of folks in the community whose kids are at GTech. So
It's like over
and I
here
think
somewhere,
it's
right?
right- Yeah.
I think that's over. It's Redwood Shores, right?
It's that much. Okay.
It's it would be, so there's a bridge right here. So to get there by foot or bike, you'd go over that bridge, I think, and then follow down. And this is about where that library is, the newer library. Yeah.
Okay.
I live in Oakland, but I know a thing or two about this area. So part of this process is obviously having meetings like this, going out, listening to the community, hearing their input. And so the first community that we wanted to go and present to and listen to is the
Go ahead, keep going. I'm just letting people in.
is the community that is directly adjacent. And so in our opinion, probably most impacted by this development. And so that's I think it goes, I don't know that they sort of have a single name, but Fairlawn or California Cottages, but it's all of the residences that are out there on the island. And so a few months ago, in May, we held a meeting with them at the Belmont Sports Complex and presented what was then our proposed project. And we did get we received a lot of feedback. And in response to that feedback, what we did is we heard, these are, there's nothing there. There's a scale of building that already exists. There is, these are single family homes, and this building that's especially closest to the project seems out of touch with the scale. And so, and then obviously there's the type of concern that all of us have when a new project comes to our neighborhood or our community, which is traffic. And so as a response to hearing that feedback, what we did here was, and what I'm presenting now as a revised project, is we dropped this building, our proposal for this building, by 5 stories. So we reduced the size of the project by 60,000 square feet. And so we ended up taking off 2 life science stories and 3 stories of parking right there. And that was to make sure that the scale felt, less out of touch with what the existing fabric was. Also to make sure that, we, as a part of any project, we do these shadow studies, right? And to look throughout the year, every hour of the year, literally every hour of the year. It's a lot of hours. I don't know how many that is, but every hour of the year we look at the shadow. And we found, with what we're proposing here, there's only 3 days in the year where a shadow would fall over those houses before 3 p.m. At this height. And so we thought that was important. By reducing the parking, we reduced the parking from, in commercial development, we talk about parking ratios on a per square foot basis. We went from a 2.5 space per 1,000 square feet ratio down to a 2.0. It means that we've lobbed off over 500 spaces from the parking. And so that's what we're showing here, that it's not as impactful when I draw a red line here, but it also meant that 2 stories of the parking structure came off. Now let's see. So this is another image. So this one, you'd be sort of hovering north of the project over O'Neill Slough. This shows you that shoreline perspective. So this is building 1 here in the center, the sports complex, the backstop, what do you call it, backstop? It's been a long time since I played baseball. What is it? Backstop, right? Is right here where my cursor is. You see the parking structure here, building 2 to the left. And the proposed public amenity that I mentioned is right, the large one is right at the bottom of that parking structure facing the sports complex. And that was really intentional. We thought that was the place that it would be most closest to where most people want to be. And so you have a huge amount of families, parents coming to the sports complex on weeknights and on weekends. You have teams trying to find a place to go and get a pizza afterwards or whatever it may be. And so we thought bringing like real sort of like full-throated food and beverage amenity directly to the sports complex would be seen as a benefit. And we have also met with the sports complex, like all of the different user groups of the sports complex. So AYSO and the Little League and the baseball, I don't know all of them. But we met with all of them. They all meet occasionally in a room at the sports complex. And so we presented to them very early on, and they agreed that they said, we don't fear that this is going to compete with our hot dog stand. And we do think we'd be happy to have something like this right here. What this also shows is a shoreline restoration, essentially. And so in addition to the city of Belmont, one of the governmental bodies that has jurisdiction over our project is called the Bay Conservation and Development District. They have jurisdiction over 100 feet, everything that's within 100 feet of the shoreline of the bay. And so this obviously falls within that 100-foot band. And so they have jurisdiction, and they have a very sophisticated design review board. And so we brought our initial proposal to that design review board, and they said, we want to see a more natural slope, excuse me, for the project, which meant that we needed to take this building right here and we needed to push it back. And so this proposal shows that pushing it back, right? So that's in addition to lowering the height of the building and lowering the parking, we also said, okay, we're going to completely change the design of this building to make sure that you have more space for a naturalistic shoreline, and still have a really wide, generous public use path. So I'll show you that public use path also. So this is within that area that I just showed. This is sort of sitting right here. So here you can see that shoreline behind. You can see building 2 right here in the background. And this is, again, more or less, previously we were hovering more or less where these birds were. So now you're sitting sort of in that band. And so this is a gently rising 6-to-1 slope. And so we're giving about 100 feet of the site over to the bay. And then this here is just a night shot. Night shots are when projects look best. And so we like to show a night shot.
So
Yep.
our neighbors over in the shore spots, they just finished or they're still working on, but putting like a big flood barrier essentially, and you're building right next to where they just put like a 4-foot flood barrier, but you're not. So do you expect your project not to be flooded, or you, like, you've got it high enough that only the parking garages would flood? Like, I'm curious what you're doing about flood control.
Yeah, good question. So within BCDC jurisdiction, when you build these projects, you need to build them to accommodate a 20, 50, 100-year tide. What we're building, and then you need to make sure that they're adaptable to a 2100 100-year tide. What we're proposing in our project here is to raise it up to a 2100 king tide, and it's adaptable up to a 2100 100-year tide.
So you're literally raising both sides.
We're raising it up. So down at the street, you're at about 9 feet. When you come up to this BCDC, to this shoreline, you're up at 15 feet. Same with our buildings. As a best practice, we're raising what's called the finished floor area. When you walk into the lobby, the finished floor area, up to 15 feet. So it can withstand a 2080 100-year flood. So that's what it is. Sorry, we're building to a 2080 100-year, 2100 adaptable at the shoreline, which means we can sort of just like, there's a little wall right here. We can raise that wall a little bit, not much. I want to say less than 12 inches, and we would accommodate the 2100.
So instead of a 7-story building, it's going to be 8 stories tall by the time you raise it up another 15 feet.
Depends where you're standing. If you're up on the trail, it's still just a 7-story building.
But it's still, it's 15 feet taller.
You could say that, yeah.
Can I ask Ethan, because we've also had major flooding issues on the other side of 101, especially where the mobile home park is. And
I
don't know how.
I do not know where that is exactly.
It's right at Harbor Boulevard.
Okay.
So it's like, and
Just south of Ralston. kind of
it's
in-
south
in
of
the-
Ralston, but like that area has been hit by significant flooding in the past. I know that they were trying to do some things kind of near there, but but it is a question because if everyone's doing different kinds of efforts around flooding, just how coordinated some of that is.
Yeah, that's a great question, Carrie, because the city is going all in up at Twin Pines,
Yeah.
like trying to put in underground storage, and then there's gonna be biotech at Harbor and Old County, and they're talking about reconfiguring the creek, and then you guys are gonna be downstream of that. Like, it'd be great to know like what the whole creek management plan is, right?
Yeah. And I
I
don't
mean,
know if
it's-
that's under review.
Yeah, you guys must be down there where it dumps out though, right? They're not really.
No, they're east of the. harbor.
Yeah,
The
but
outfall
those
over
are the
here,
ones-
the outfall sort of is in O'Neill Slough, sort of north of our project.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's one that comes up a lot. And people, do look to these developments and think that we are able to, contribute to these solutions. The way that we are addressing it on site is a way to address this problem, right? It's like what Foster City did, right? They just did it with a sheet metal levee, but like, you just raise the wall, right? And so that's essentially what we're doing with this shoreline, is that we're raising up. And so we're accommodating flooding, but also sea level rise up into 2100. And, in a perfect world, every neighbor has the resources to do that to their, shore fronting land. Obviously, that's not the case. And these types of solutions, like regional problems, require regional solutions. There is obviously an organization, One Shoreline, out there who has a comprehensive plan. But I don't know how much buy-in there is from each jurisdiction, and each jurisdiction has different amounts of money and, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but right now the way our project is approaching this is following One Shoreline's project checklist for how to address, sea level rise. But is there a need at some point for Belmont and for Redwood Shores to have a coordinated response to sea level rise? Yes. Can we do that with this one project? No, we can do two things. We can do what we're doing, which is taking our site and implementing best practices for sea level rise. We also are going, as a part of this project, to be paying a lot of money to the city in what are called development impact fees, which for a project this size is quite a lot of money. And so as a result, the city has resources, in its coffers directly as a result from this project, that if it chooses to direct towards that type of effort, it can. And then additionally, we're now tax-paying members of the community, right? And so just like you would pay your fair share with your taxes to a regional solution, we would be doing the same as landowners, long-term landowners in Belmont.
Sorry, what was the one shoreline? I didn't catch
One shoreline.
That's what it's called.
You should have them come present.
Yeah, no, we can have a phone. It's just, we've heard it from other developers who come to visit us about their flood signs, and so it's more of a, everyone's doing their own, so just.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Carlos is doing the Northeast area plan, it's gonna have flood control, and Belmont's doing the Harbor Industrial Area. And it's gonna flood control. Everybody's talking about flood control, but nobody's.
There is this firm called Good City, just so a little inside baseball. There's a firm called Good City that does staff augmentation for a lot of cities here in the peninsula, and including staff augmentation for one shoreline. So there is actually sort of like a shared staffing pool that all of these organizations, including one shoreline, have. So they all are sort of connected in their own way.
I'm sorry, go on.
Yes. I'm happy to stop and do more questions. So just stop me whenever, but so those are my pretty pictures. I'm just going to move to talk about site access, just so you understand a little bit about how to get, how the site works. And so here is what I was talking about in terms of like really filling in the gap that currently exists on the site as a result of its sort of status as a long vacant lot. So you can see the light orange is the very robust trail network that runs through this part of Belmont. But right now it's, it really stops everywhere you see the dark orange, and we plan to fill that in again in a really robust way. This is bike access. And so, Belmont's Public Works Department is very bike forward in terms of their priorities. And so as part of the project, we'll be adding a significant amount of bike lanes. We'll be putting protected, I get these screwed up all the time, protected class 2 lanes all the way down Island Parkway from Ralston / I never know what to call this, Ralston or Marine, but I don't know what it is right there, but up to that street. Okay. And we'll be adding protected class 2 lanes all the way on both sides, all the way. So right when you make a left to go to the Mercedes dealership, you'll see those protected class 2 lanes all the way onto the island. When you hit Concourse here, which is the street that crosses the island, that's actually a cycle track or a class 4 bike lane. So that's a fully protected 2-way bike lane that would connect one side of the island over to the other. And so if you were a bike commuter per se, if you think you're a bike commuter, you're not looking for sort of the nice scenic route around. You jump across this bridge, you'd have a cycle track to get right across, and you'd carry on to Foster City, you'd shave off, 3 minutes from your ride. But also a lot of potential sort of congestion here with walkers and potential other users. And then obviously the trail itself. The trail itself is not, like everywhere else on the Bay Trail, it's not a bike trail, it's a multi-use path. And so it means bikers can ride at a reasonable speed, and walkers can feel safe also. And then we are adding more of a tree-lined entry to the site here that will serve both the city sports complex lot as well as our lot. So it'll be more of like a marked entry experience, and that'll be a bike lane. So if you were to have arrived by bicycle here, you'd make a left into the site and have a dedicated path here between, a boulevard down surrounded, a lane surrounded by trees until you got onto that multi-use path. Last are cars, and something we wanted to, be respectful about was how many cars were circulating around the residential portions of the island. And so you can see if you were arriving by car here, if you were a sports complex user, or you were parking in this lot here because you worked in building 1 or building 2, you'd arrive on the island, you'd make really your first left to get access to that parking structure or to access the surface lot, or you'd make the second left for a secondary entrance into the parking structure. Otherwise, you'd make a first right to access the existing building's parking lot, or building 3 here, also that first right. No one parking on the island would ever make it down to Concourse or have any need to circle around. The only reason to circle around is if you were dropping somebody off or picking somebody up at building 1 or building 2. This drop-off area, again, it's right behind that backstop there. And so we think, I've never been to the sports complex on a weekend or during a tournament, but I understand it gets quite busy. If you were a parent just dropping off a kid, we also think this is a resource because it means you can bypass what I imagine or what I've heard is a very busy drop-off area in front of the sports complex. And so this puts it all together. And so we've tried to really address sort of every mode of transportation. We've tried to fill in where we think there are gaps on our site. And again, we've tried to enhance, augment, complement, and really make it a really robust site and surrounding area. This is something I just wanted to touch on briefly. I don't know how interested you are in this, but one of the areas, one aspect of the project that the city encouraged us to include was resurfacing and improvement of the existing surface parking lot at the sports complex, which is what you can see right now. Obviously, our parking structure will be directly adjacent to it. And also because we have those 80 spaces dedicated for sports complex users, a lot of folks might want to come in, see that there's no parking here, and have to circle out and move over to our complex. And so what we've done is, at the city's request, is we've created a consolidated entrance for both lots. And we've also proposed to resurface, as you see here. It expands the lot to accommodate what was 45 stalls is now 52 stalls, so a few more stalls. But it also creates a turnaround here. So if you're just dropping off, you don't have to circle through and wait for people to back up or get out of their parking spaces or park or whatever. You can sort of do a quick exit out to the right. You have a lot more trees as you walk in, as you come in here. Right now, again, it's really like a dirt lot, not a lot of trees. This is that lane of trees that I mentioned before. This is right now a dirt slope. We're proposing to plant and irrigate that. And so you have really more of a, like right when you arrive here, you should still feel like you're having an experience in nature. So if you were on the Bay Trail, you should still feel like you're on the Bay Trail when you get here. So all new plantings, and we'll be adding signage. So when you arrive at this point, you really feel like you've arrived to a place. You have the sports complex, you have our new amenities, you have connections across the 101 on the bike bridge. You have connections over to Foster City by traversing down our site. And so there will be a signage network also. So you really are arriving at a really comprehensive place. Okay, so that's the project. And now this is just a quick overview of timeline. I won't spend a lot of time here. We submitted the project for initial review back in October of 22. So what's that, 11 months now. Since then, we've been coordinating very closely with city staff on project details. Like I said, we had gone out to the Farallon community and the California cottages for a community presentation last summer. This summer, it's still summer, I think. We've gone to BCDC to get their initial feedback. We are planning to go back to BCDC in November. We're planning to resubmit to the city with new project details that I'm sharing with you all tonight. In October, and then we think processing of all of this. So this obviously, for those of you familiar with development, this requires an environmental impact report under California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. And so behind the scenes is all of this, shaping of the project and talking to community and working with the city and getting BCDC approval. CEQA is happening in the background. That EIR is being drafted and vetted, public comment, redrafted, back to public comment, and then hoping to get to public hearings, planning commission, city council, more or less this time next year. So it's a long haul. This is my job security through the recession. And lastly, I just wanted to lay out what we think are some project benefits. You may not agree with all of these, but this is our best shot at understanding sort of what we think are real benefits of this project from a community perspective. So one is the construction of 80 parking spaces fully dedicated to the sports complex users. The second are those amenities that I mentioned, having restaurant amenities open to the public, strategically placed next to the sports complex. high quality walking and biking trails. Again, these are going to be of the best quality that you see anywhere in the Bay, brand new, the best landscape design, the best landscape designers. We have very good landscape designers. They think they're the best landscape designers. Public artwork, we'll have public artwork throughout the project. And then again, the new bike lane network, really where there is not a robust bike lane network on that island, we'll be adding brand new, totally comprehensive bike lane network. In addition, there's obviously the financial benefits of the project to the community. So there's development impact fees, there's the taxes that go to schools, and these are substantial amounts, both in terms of the initial value, which are those impact fees, but then the ongoing tax revenue for the community. And with that, I will stop talking and answer your questions. So thanks very much for listening.
How many people are going to be employed there?
Yeah, so right now we're proposing about 795,000 square feet. And we have, I'm going to ask Brent to do a little math for me. Typically for so one distinction between a life science project and a regular commercial office project is that life science projects are very less intensively populated with employees, just because there's so much R&D space. It's not people sitting next to each other at at desks. And so where a typical commercial office project has pre-COVID, let's call it 9 people per 1,000 square feet. A life science project, what we find on our campuses is 2.5 to 3 people per 1,000 square feet. Brent's going to do that math really quickly.
I think what we heard from another life science,
Around 2,000 people, full build out.
the down the street, another development that presented the life sciences project to us. It also sounds like it's not as just like a 9 to 5, but it kind of spreads out the time, right? Because the number of people is lower, but then I think it's more regular, right? There's not like.
I'm not going to tell you that they were lying to you, but we do find that it's largely 9 to 5. There are absolutely circumstances where people are working different hours, right? When you're running an experiment, that's when you're going to have to come in whatever hour the experiment requires you to come in, or on the weekend. But generally speaking, folks are still coming in regular working hours. But we do find that Mondays and Fridays, like anywhere, not only do we have what's going on at a life science build, right? But building, we also have like the post-COVID workplace, which means that Monday and Friday, we definitely see a major dip in attendance. Wednesday and Thursdays when you'd probably get up to your highest levels of attendance, but you're probably no longer looking ever at like everybody there at the same time. That we are not seeing that happening at any of our campuses anymore. I'm not doing that at my own office, right? Yeah.
Part of that question about people, the entrance and exit is Ralston Avenue, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So are they going to widen that so that people can get back on the freeway? Because what happens with Sterling Downs, even through Oracle, is 101 gets backed up, and guess where they're coming? They're coming through Miller, down Sterling View, and through Sterling Downs and so forth, for the traffic on Old County Road. So how are you gonna mitigate 2,000 people getting on 101 when it's already backed up?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we're only providing parking for two spaces per 1,000, right? So we're providing less parking than we anticipate there being people. That's the first thing, right? And so not everybody, there won't be space for everybody to have their own car at the levels that I just told you. Second, Belmont requires that we have a comprehensive transportation demand management plan, right? That requires, up to 18, I think you have to hit, there's a 25 point or 30 point sort of matrix, and you have to hit 18 points for your project. Our project proposes 25 points, which includes shuttle buses, which includes all these public improvements, which includes vouchers for employees, which includes, it's all the stuff that's typically in a TDM plan, really just to try to bring those numbers down, to encourage people to either carpool or to do something aside from drive. But then in terms of the transportation, part of our CEQA process is looking at all the transportation. CEQA does not look at traffic the same way anymore, right? So CEQA is not saying traffic's the thing that's going to stop development in the state. That was a policy change that happened in California. But Belmont still has the transportation improvement, I forget what it's called, TIA, I forget exactly what it stands for. maybe the council member knows, but it's TIA. So Belmont still has its own goals for how it wants traffic to work. And typically what we do is, and so as part of our process, we'll be studying and you'll be able to access all the studies that show you how those intersections are working when you take into account our project. And so I can't answer exactly today how it will work, but I do know that, we do not believe our project breaks the system. We do think it works based on those studies that we've done. And then there are opportunities for us to be asked by the city to pay our fair share of improvements that are needed as a result of us, but also other growth within the region, within the city, and just generally sort of improvements that are needed because they've been deferred or whatever it might be. So there's not a very clear answer to your question, I guess, but that's hopefully I've tried to hit a few points.
Just put it out there, if I can see it coming.
The question, do you have plans to ask for permission for biosafety level 3 in your development?
So we are just a developer. We are not a we don't apply for research, right? And so those are our tenants. And so
So you wouldn't try to get the zoning adjusted in advance, the tenants would have to go and get the zoning adjusted to allow for it.
we have said that we will support, whatever Belmont wants to support. We do think that obviously BSL 3 increases Belmont's appeal to a tenant who needs to do that type of science, right? Or thinks that they might want to do that type of science. And so obviously we want to open our doors as widely as possible to as many tenants as we can possibly have. We think BSL 3 is safe, but again, we're real estate developers and operators of real estate. Our tenants are the ones who are operating, all of the things that are regulated under the BSL levels. So we do know that, in South San Francisco, we've seen it implemented successfully and we've never had an incident at one of our sites. But again, we really are following the lead of the jurisdiction. So yes, of course, we would like to be as appealing as possible to the most amount of tenants. It's a competitive market out there for life science right now in the Bay. But again, we're not pushing for or advocating for anything specific.
What's the tenant probability, like there's buildings going everywhere, right? Along the peninsula, and you see so many cranes lining up. Are we sure we're gonna get tenants for all these buildings?
Are we sure? No. Are we hopeful? Yes. We have a good track record. I think that, something that we've looked at as we consider our future is we've been doing life science for a really long time. I led by saying a little bit about BioMed, and I said BioMed is the largest privately held life science real estate owner, operator, developer in the world. And we've been around doing it a very long time. And life science tenants have very specific needs from a real estate perspective, and we know what those needs are. We've had to meet those needs for the highest class of those tenants in the world. So we think that our properties stand head and shoulders above most of our competitors' properties. There are other competitors operating at our level, but not that many of them. And most of the buildings you see aren't from those competitors that I would say are operating at our level. Very few of them are. And so that's sort of what we think. And we have the track record, right? So.
Oh, yeah, it's obvious, we have all these, so many properties, your big dot red, right? So.
Right.
Yeah.
Questions? I think that the one general trend, like one person in,
They want to hear the council member. They don't want to hear me.
so the major, I think our neighborhood often just gives feedback on is obviously about traffic in the country that you've heard about, and also our neighborhood and the intersection specifically that we get concerned about is Pillar at Masonic and Ralston, and kind of the cut through of bikers and pedestrians through that area because of the connection from Caltrain over to that side. And so you even have people who are trying to cross the entries onto 101 to get over to those areas. And so I think as long as in the traffic, and we'll have to look at kind of what your plans were for that, but it's just, I think we're looking to just make sure that people who are passing through our neighborhood are gonna be, or coming through our neighborhood, that that's done safely, that it's not adding to more concerns from us. But I think those are the pieces that I think I've heard most. And that we see, especially in the mornings, like when you see kids going over to the school, who are walking or biking, and then also people who are working, and again, just crossing through, those areas. I think we want to think about them in addition to all the other cars. So I think those are some of the main things. Are there any other key things you guys want them to think about from our neighborhood?
I think they can attract some good tenants.
Yeah.
That means our house is gonna go higher worship. It's obvious, you have track record, attracting tenants, so,
Yeah, we hope so.
How long do you think the actual
So you saw it, hopefully less than the entitlements, no kidding, but the torn shell, like for one of those buildings that you saw, one of the larger buildings that you saw, typically is 2 years. From when we break ground, we would build this probably in phases, right? And so we proposed to build probably what we call building 1, along with the parking structure. Together, those would probably take 2-ish years. A tenant comes in, say they take a full floor of one of our buildings or 2 floors, that likely takes another year, but it might be that they start before we're done. So there's about 6 months before we're done, we can safely get their team in to start then. So 2.5 years to get a tenant occupied in one of our buildings, from dirt to building to tenant doing science. And then market will demand for each future phase. But
So
each
if approval is at the end of
24.
2024, and you're saying that construction 25 through like 27, 28.
Permitting for, let's call it 6 months, and then construction from midway through 25 through midway through 27. Exactly, yeah. Yeah,
Done deal. This is done, I mean,
No, that's fine.
is the
The time zone.
people.
oh, no, we're early on in this. We're early on in this process, yeah. I mean, it's been almost a year, but if you look at that timeline, we're half-ish way through that process, right? Halfway through that process.
I think it's can you go back to this? I think it was planning commissions in like summer 2024.
Yeah, and typically, and we're working with staff right now to determine when we'd go to planning commission first and to do exactly what. But an actual hearing for them to make a recommendation wouldn't be until fall of 24, because that hearing requires that the entire CEQA process is complete. So they'd be recommending that they certify the CEQA EIR in addition to approving the conceptual development plan and the general plan amendment. So we need to go through that CEQA process, which will take until about all through summer of 24.
One final question, is there a website that has all this summed up, or should we just plan on sharing the slides with people?
You can feel free to share the slides. You can give people my contact information if you'd like. There is all of our project documents get uploaded by the city when we submit them to their website. It usually takes a little while for them to do that, but you can also access everything we convey to the city is public. So at some point we have to show people the project, right? It's not going to be a secret once we build it. So,
And sorry, just to confirm, the Beaumont Sports Complex will be totally open and accessible full time.
yes, and we will work very closely with folks to make sure that it's not impacted in any negative way by our construction. There might be a few, construction always involves some points of friction, but we are committed to being good neighbors and making sure that we reduce those points of friction as much as we can, and we have good experience doing that. I manage a project right now for us of about this scale in Emeryville. It's directly adjacent to a number of residences, and we have an excellent working relationship with them. They have my phone number, they have our site lead's phone number. We have had a few things happen, but we've been able to resolve them without any real true conflict.
Is that the one that's on the estuary there? You know, from the 80s?
No, that one's actually in Berkeley. It's on the Berkeley Aquatic Park. That's our competitor. But ours is, if you know the old Chiron campus, where Novartis was, you can see it kind of behind the IKEA, I guess is the best way to say it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Brent.
All right, well, thank you. Councilmember Latimerlo is also here. Yes, I will, after this, I usually send a quick summary out to everybody, and then because we're recording this Zoom too, then I'll include a link for the whole thing. But we'll send that all out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to invite Councilmember Latimerlo up to share her update as well. And let me pull up her presentation so that she'll be all set as well. All right, here you go, Gina. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. It's all right. Okay. That's okay. Just, I think this, yeah, just use the arrows.
Hi. Do this. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna use the music stand. That's okay. I'm used to
Are you
music
sure?
stands. Yeah.
That's true. If anybody knows a good music stand.
I just worked on the Ave Maria with a student right before I came here. So hi, I'm Gina, and I am your District 1 City Council member. I want to push this down a little bit so I could see you. I'm going to switch you guys. So I have some things that we can pass them out. So there's a little, oh, thank you. Maybe one of the sheets first. I put this one on there. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right, hello everybody on Zoom and everybody here. So it's nice to see some familiar faces and people I don't know yet. I have these new sets for you guys. I just got them back from the printer, finished designing them, and got them back from the printer last week. And over the next couple months, I'm gonna walk them door to door with everybody in the district. So you may get another one of these, but I wanted you guys to have some of the pictures and information on what we're talking about. So as a note, so there's a slideshow that Carrie set up. Thank you, Carrie. Set it up on the Zoom there. And as a note, the newsette and the slideshow and the website that you see, those are from me as your representative. So that's not official city communications. This is from me as your District 1 representative. Yeah. If you want official stuff, there are links on my website, and you can also go to belmont.gov. So, and in my website, you see the QR code, which is should make it easy. And I'm thinking maybe we go through the whole presentation and then do questions at the end. But Carrie, if I'm saying something that's not clear, just be like, hey, that's not clear. That's it. So the first thing here is the Google slide that we're on. So pretty much everything we're going to talk about is on my website. It has links to all the stuff we're talking about today. And I do have, it sounds like there's some interest in understanding development timelines, like when a project, I'm sorry, I don't know your name in the red jacket, but Chris, but you were asking Ethan about like when stuff happens and how can you get, my sense was you wanted to get community input before things become a done deal. And so I'll talk about that in a second. There's like a pretty typical timeline of what happens with development. And it takes about 18 months to 2 years to go from when the permit is applied for to things being fully approved. And then it's like maybe 6 months after that, the construction happens. So there's actually lots of time, which is cool. the other things that I'll just pull out on this slide, if you go to the website, there are all the things we're talking about today, but also resident resources like cheat sheets for working through permitting for housing additions. I had to do that. We built an ADU and did a kitchen remodel, and the process is pretty cumbersome to understand. So I made cheat sheets for all of us normal people. That's like one page, clickable links, orders. So that's there. Also senior resources, where to take your pet, where to work out, all of that's there. And I also am doing first Friday office hours. Just jump on the Zoom the first Friday from 11 to 11:25, and I'm there. So it'll be easy to find me. I don't know that I know how to do this. How do I make it go?
Just reset there. Oh, it was. Let me see. There it is.
Yay. Okay.
It's because I responded to Zoom.
Okay.
Go ahead.
But now I can just
Yeah,
press
now
the
you can just press-
awesome. I don't think I've done a Zoom presentation like this before at the same time as doing this. Is exciting. So here you'll see up there. So this is great that this is also up there. That's awesome. I didn't know that we'd have that capacity. So we've all been through this with elections, right? Those are the districts that Belmont is in now. And then that's a zoom in of all of our neighborhoods and kind of what the neighborhoods are named. I wrote on a couple of things that were missing from the official map. So that's us. You can also look at my earrings. This is an aerial map of our district.
Sweet.
I was so excited that they had something that nerdy. So let's talk about infrastructure. So the main question I get a lot is about roads and are we fixing our roads and how are we fixing our roads? So yes, the roads have been neglected for decades. A lot of the work has happened over the last 4 or 5 years to get our roads to higher standards. So this is the map. And if you go to that website, the belmont.gov, that it's very official. And it tells you when each street for the next few years is going to be addressed. And how are streets chosen? Well, they're chosen through a computer algorithm, and that takes into account what public utility work needs to be done underneath the road, if that makes sense. We can't plan for private, right? That just happens. And also what heavy machinery we're renting on what year. Depends. So each road fix is a little bit different. So everything goes into the computer algorithm and then gets spit out, and then the city follows that so that it's fair for everybody. That's roads. There's a lot of questions in terms of traffic. And Ethan was talking about how CEQA has kind of changed traffic mitigation, that they don't look at traffic in the same way. So I think what I'd like to say out loud is I want you to have an understanding of how restrictive state laws have become in terms of cars, traffic, and housing. In terms of cars, I think it's fair to say that the state's intent is to make it as unappealing to have a car as possible. They're trying to get cars off the road, which does not mean improving traffic, right? Does that make sense? So I anticipate using more laws around that in the next 5 years. And then the state laws are things that cities can't really do much about, right? So the good thing about that is it encourages public transportation and keeps our air clean and will eventually reduce traffic, but that makes it very tricky for us, those of us who are living at the time of transition. The good news is that Belmont is trying to get creative. That adaptation signal technology, I don't know if you guys were there, you were unveiled at the corner of Hiller and Ralston, where it allows more traffic to come through, was a big deal. And that's been done all the way up Ralston. And we just won a Silicon Valley Public Works Award last spring. So it feels like for that adaptive technology. So it feels like, we're not doing enough, but apparently we're doing better than everybody else because they gave us an award. But be sure to keep telling us when stuff comes up, right? So that speed sign, the sign on Hiller that says, hey, you're going this speed, is a result of neighborhood activism. So that was really awesome. So because of state laws, we couldn't put speed bumps there, but we were able to find another way to try to make people aware of the speed. So that is roads. And then we'll talk about sewers and drainage. So our sewers are regularly maintained by our public works. We have one of the lowest infiltration and inflow rates of any city, which means we're doing a good job taking care of it. So again, one of the top cities in the county for that. But many of our sewers are older and require upgrading. So currently a master plan is being put in place. How can we make the sewers work, especially with all this upcoming development? And as you heard from Ethan, any new developer has to upgrade the sewers that they are going to be impacting and upgrade the sewer system. Yeah, so that's really cool. They have to do the same thing with roads, by the way. They have to improve every road that their new property touches. So that's awesome. And they also have to do storm drainage. So a lot of the things that you're going to be seeing in the, I mean, you pointing the wrong direction. The harbor industrial area, is that direction? Are you serious? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but close. Okay, I still feel proud. Yeah, okay. So we're asking quite a bit from the developers in the HIA to deal with the Belmont Creek, because part of the flooding issues has to do with the fact that the Belmont Creek is on private property. So whatever they don't do in upkeep, right, there's affects the rest of us. So when we have new developers come in, we can say to the developers, hey, if you would like to buy this property, you have to fix the creek. And so so sometimes working with developers is a lovely thing because you get new stuff out of it. I'm glad he left. Oh, this is being videoed. Okay, so we're doing a master plan on the sewer system. One thing as current homeowners that you can do your part is to check your sewer lateral. Does everybody know the excitement of your sewer lateral? It's the pipe that runs from your house to the street. So part of the issues with the flooding was that, people's sewers laterals were kind of broken or were letting in the rainwater and the storm water. Because a lot of us have older houses, right? And they were built with clay sewer laterals, like my house. So clay sewer laterals are meant to last about 50 years. My house was born in 1948, right? So and your houses in Sterling Downs are not so much younger. So checking that. So what happened was, from even the private residences, the stormwater from the New Year's flood came into the sewer system, and as it infiltrated all the way down the hill, now it's at us, and so the sewers are now overflowing. So it's just a way to help. But the good news is, again, not only will sewers be looked at in a master plan, but storm drainage will be too. So we've just started a master plan to try to improve that as well. That storm was a once in every 200 years storm, so that was a doozy. But we definitely have plans to improve the outflow of the Belmont Creek, which is our main storm drainage. The other, but a piece of that is already happening. I don't know if anybody heard about the Twin Pines Basin project, which is, it's kind of cool. And actually we had the plans to do it before the flood, but we couldn't get funding from any of this kind of like state or local funding sources. And then the flood happened and somehow we got the funding. So I don't know if those things were somehow tied together, but so they're going to build these two giant basins in Twin Pines Park, right near the creek, so that when the water comes flooding down the hill toward us, they have two containers where they can catch a lot of the water and then release it later after. Yeah, it seems like a cool plan. And then they'll also have it more cleanly redirected into the creek as opposed to letting it spill over the sides. So, so that's happening in the next couple months. So there'll be some construction at Twin Pines, but it's so we don't flood. That's that. Okay, so now we're moving into developments. So that's the Belmont village specific plan. And this was adopted in 2017. They had done 2 years of community outreach and research, and also research on how kind of build out analyses and how would it work for city planning. This BVSP plan is a subset of the city's general plan. The goal for this area, which as you can see is all us, all District 1, almost a little bit of District 2, is to create a vibrant downtown center with mixed use areas so that everything's connected. People can walk and bike to shopping and transit and parks. It's about 80 acres. And I think you can probably see the purple is like the main downtown area. So there's going to be a little more density there, more shops, more traditional vibe when you go down there in terms of look and feel. The green is primarily you guys here in Sterling Downs, and less intensity in development and more of an artsy vibe down here. And then the pink is a little bit of view, a little bit of home view, a lot of the harbor industrial area. And that is also less intensity, but more commercial is available. So we could build things like biotech down there. But odds are in the Sterling Downs area, we're not looking at something as large as biotech. So we're putting a lot of the industry in either the eastern parts of Belmont past 101 or in the Old County Harbor Industrial area. So that's kind of how that works. If you want more detail around, especially like how are the bike paths and pedestrian areas planned, there is on the Belmont.gov site, you can read actually the Belmont specific plan. It's not that bad of a read. It's okay. Yeah.
So, as part of the housing element, there's gonna be lots of rezoning, so a lot of BVSP zoning is gonna change, other zoning is gonna change. Do you know when all that's gonna happen? And also, did we ever resubmit our new housing element?
So this, the state has been going back and forth with pretty much all of the cities. So
I know, but we got a letter in April and I haven't seen like a new updated, have we resubmitted?
So the final adjustments are happening on Tuesday.
Okay.
At the Tuesday city council meeting. And the things that got added, the state has been asking cities to do more work around having housing in other parts of the city.
Oh.
So they added a couple of additional pieces of allowing some lot splitting and ease of ADUs to try to allow single family parcels that are maybe not in this main area to be able. Yes, the folks up there.
With single family homes, they're not rezoning for apartments.
No, they're not there. But they're trying to allow for more flexibility within single family areas and for lot splitting and things like that. So those were the two additions, and we anticipate discussing and possibly passing those, and then again resubmitting to the state. But it's been a lot of back and forth and a lot of like re-answering the same questions and things.
Yeah, one reason I was asking though was because you were commenting about sort of we can walk to shops, and you and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
And I brought it up at planning commission. I think as part of the rezoning, we might need to look at both sticks and carrots to actually get mixed use instead of 100% housing. Because so far, the last 8 projects, 100% housing, right? We're not getting coffee shops, we're not getting restaurants, we're not gonna get our own food back, we're not gonna get. So what can I think the planning commission needs, and the staff need to take a serious look at how we can actually get mixed use in our mixed use areas.
Yeah.
And so would that also be part of all the new zoning that has to be written?
So depending on, pretty much everything, here is commercial mixed use. So there's 2 pieces. It's a really good question. Some of the affordable housing stuff really is just.
Sure, they need their exemptions. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But, the 815 Old County Road, they put in the bare minimum, the one that's going in at Coriander, 100% housing.
So
rate. So like, how do we get a coffee shop?
I know, I want a coffee shop too. And actually I was going to talk about 580 Masonic. So I have not heard that it's going to be full residence. It's 4 stories, but commercial on the bottom is the last I've heard.
Oh, that's new. Okay.
Yeah. So that project has been, we should all take a breath. That project has been submitted. But I have that it's going to be commercial on the bottom is last I heard, which is cool. And I would love if anybody, I will go in with anybody who wants to do a coffee shop because we need that and it would make us so much happier. So 580, that so far is what's being planned. So one of the tricks is that when you're doing the commercial mixed use, we've done a few like Firehouse Square commercial mixed use, right? That even though it's affordable, there is some spaces on the bottom and then it's residential on top, right? And then there was a project a few years ago that was on El Camino, which has apartments on top and has commercial spaces on the bottom. One of the things that has been challenging has been to find commercial renters. So it's actually empty. That project that was built in El Camino probably 4 or 5 years ago has not been able to get a commercial renter. So it's one thing to create the spaces, but it's another thing to know that those spaces are going to be rented. And then as developers start to look at like, okay, we're doing commercial mixed use, is that actually a feasible rentable space? So there's
But
that
they're already
piece.
rentable now. I mean, those places have all been full since I've been here. for 15
No, the
years.
commercial spaces are not. So underneath Firehouse Square,
No, sorry, the ones in Sterling Downs now that are gonna go away and become housing. Peacock's Coriander, that
Oh,
shopping
sure.
center has been full this whole time.
Yeah.
So
I think what I'm saying is in some of the other projects in other areas, when they've built commercial space, because the neighborhoods really want commercial space, I get it. I want to have a place to drop off my kid or whatever. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to find commercial renters. So it makes it a little bit of a hard argument to say, okay, well, we want commercial mixed use, but we have hard time finding renters. But again, 580 Masonic, the last I talked to everybody, commercial is on the bottom. I've even heard from one or two of the owners that there's some plans of somebody like during development, they're just gonna, close up shop for a year and then come back when the place is available again. So, so that's good news for that. Okay, so, but that actually very nicely brings things. Did you have another question? Robert?
it's not zoned for 7, it's 5.
And I think they're talking 4 right now. I mean, it's zoned for 5, but I think they're talking about 4 plus and then commercial. That was a great segue, Joanne. Thank you. Now we're at the development map. That was awesome. We didn't plan that. So I just drew this out because I needed to be able to see what was happening in our district. So hopefully you can read my handwriting. Everything purple is either residential or residential mixed use. Anything blue is primarily is only commercial. So we have a lot of housing being built. And, I think all of us are pretty familiar with the fact that there's all these state housing laws that are coming down. We have our responsibility to build. So you'll see a lot of residential housing being built due to the lack of housing, especially affordable housing. The idea that Belmont's been working with is like trying to find those underutilized kind of ugly parcels and replace them with something pretty. So for example, and helpful to the society. So that dead tattoo parlor, on El Camino. So that is going to be demolished and there's going to be 60 units of affordable housing beautifully newly built there. So that's really cool. Some things just to, I really just want to be super honest. State laws only permit us to have so much say in things like heights and parking and traffic. And honestly, it's a little nerve-wracking because if housing developers wanted to fully exploit any one of these hundreds of state laws, they could build something really obnoxious and there's nothing that the city can do about it.
After 8 years, they can come in and do this all over again.
I haven't read that.
It was in the paper, this is gonna happen every 8 years. The housing.
So the housing element happens.
Every 8 years. So does that mean they're gonna come in and destroy everything that they forced the cities to build?
Oh, no, that's a good question. The housing element is just it's a good question. It is really interesting. Talks about like what kind of buildings can be built where in the city, but everything stays, everything stays up. It's just a matter of like, oh, do we want to add more housing in this area of the city? Or on Davis Drive, which is a little bit farther up the hill, or
What do these people do? Just sit there and write up stuff?
maybe there's just a lot of back and forth. And what I will, if I'm super honest, I get a little frustrated because Belmont has been a really good actor in terms of building housing and building affordable housing. And so for them to like kind of like lock us into things, like it's frustrating.
You're losing your character. All these little cities on the peninsula. I mean, I grew up here in Palo Alto.
Yeah.
And I don't even recognize the place anymore.
So other cities as well as ours are feeling frustrated that, when we're trying to build the new things that are needed, but keep the character of our town, that, we're kind of hamstrung in doing that. So there's a lot of lobbying happening. You can also write your state rep, State Senator Becker and Assemblywoman Pappin are the people to talk to about this. So, so it is a real delicate game of chess for the city to try to still be able to get good community benefit and good design, even with the state laws. So
Did really well though, because they have all the easements underneath the train tracks and a lot of cities have done absolutely nothing. So
I mean, everybody, I mean, as a newbie, it's been interesting to walk into meetings with, you know, other city council members and people to kind of look at Belmont and say, you guys know what the hell you're doing. So, you know, which as somebody, like, I'm somebody who, if I'm honest, generally finds the faults faster and first, you know, so I felt a little bit of reassurance that we're doing a pretty good job. So anyway, there's lobbying happening by a bunch of us good actor cities, but we'll see what happens, right? But right now, this is where we are. Commercially, biotech companies are showing a huge interest in Belmont, and as you just heard from Ethan, it's really fast growing. And one of the reasons it's really fast growing in this area is that biotech, they are pack animals. They like to all be together, and so South City started it. And there's some in San Carlos and some in Redwood City because they like to share research, right? So, so that's one of the reasons why there's good interest here and why we think we'll get tenants in those industries. So the basic, I gave you the basic timeline because you guys had some questions on how development happens. And then here are some actual city websites where you can stay up to date on the new projects that are happening. That tiny URL, you can also find this on my website. If you go to ginaforbelmont.org, resident resources, info on city government, all of this is there. The understanding of the city's requirements for large scale development, if you would like to go to sleep one night and you need some reading, you could read that, but it's very, it's actually super informative because it says, all new development needs to do this with the sewers, this with the roads, this with the traffic. So you know that somebody is actually attending to it. And then there'll be inspections all along the way. The piece that you have is the development timeline. I'm going to go through it super fast, but this is how you, I know many of you want to be involved and be able to say your opinion and give your expertise from living here for some of the projects that are coming in. So I wanted to give a timeline, and this is, again, just, I have, it's probably a weird hobby. I just really like making handouts. So this is just a handout that I made that explains the timeline. I also have a feng shui handout if anybody's interested. Like, let's say the project gets filed and it's January year 00. The first time it's going to come to the public is about 6 months later as the staff does their work. And at this point, when it says the preparation of the environmental impact report, there's opportunity for community feedback, and the city does, but is also required by state law to reach out. So there'll be notices sent to everyone in the 300-foot radius. There'll be postings on the Belmont website. There'll be hearings at Planning Commission. Not everything comes to City Council. City Council, we only deal with policy stuff. So unless we're adjusting a policy, a lot of these development projects are going to stop at Planning Commission. So if you're interested in giving comments, you should be watching the Planning Commission agendas.
So the biotech we just heard about must have already passed this and we missed it because he said they applied a year ago. So they must have, and he said they started the EIR. So
I don't know whether they, so I don't think I have seen, I might have missed, right, because I'm pretty new. I'm not sure if they're at the notice of preparation of the EIR or at the draft EIR, but I know they're not past that.
No, they're definitely early because I think
Yeah.
it says the city, like, or the planning commission final review wouldn't be until the fall of 2024.
Their project is ginormous.
right, which is a year from now. So that means we're somewhere around a year
Like the
before
draft.
June 2001.
This is the fastest it could possibly move, is what I've written down for you. My guess,
I'll look for it. I don't remember
Yeah.
seeing that EIR come through.
if one thing I would suggest is signing up for the City Managers Weekly. You probably are, but that'll keep you really involved. But you can check for postings on the website. If you go to the big projects, there should be a page on there, and they should be able to tell you. But I really don't think we're past the
I'm
draft
pretty
EIR.
sure it's the fifth of this work,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that would be that June, that they just did the notice part.
Oh, okay. Oh, perfect. So when the draft EIR comes, this is an amazing time to give feedback because everybody is the developer, the city, everybody's feeling extra spongy because nothing's been set in stone. This is the chance to like really integrate. So the earlier you are in the process, the better it is. You can still make impacts, 18 months later at the final EIR, but now more things have been set in motion, right? More things are people are feeling good about. So the earlier you can go in the process, the more you're going to probably have good impact. So the fastest is 18 months to 20 months. Often it takes much longer than that, as the city is working through community benefits and things like that. And then usually construction is a few months after that. And then during construction, there's always a phone number to call if there's noise issues or, something's not being taken care of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lower the height because they suggest, check out where they got.
California cottages.
The residents that live right.
The ones
So
that
they
are
were
California
doing-
colonies.
They were doing outreach over there first. Yes.
Because the developer outreach is different than the city outreach. Both have to do it. The developers have to do outreach earlier than us. So they were already meeting with you guys. And one of the neighborhoods there were concerned about the height, and to their credit, they knocked off the floor. So that was.
And Ethan's been in touch with us for some time, it's just the next time that we were having a meeting in this month. And so it's just a matter of the timing.
Why somebody already had a couple there,
Mhm.
knock it down.
That's right.
Okay, cool. So that's basic timelines. And then Harbor Industrial, we're considering annexing the industrial area, which is between the edge of the Homeview neighborhood, so O'Neill, and then the train tracks, and then the Belmont Creek. So there's this like little weird rectangle that is just county owned right now. And some pieces are already in Belmont, like the Artisan Crossing apartments that are built there, that has become part of Belmont as that project came through. But we're putting together a plan to, do it well. And this gives us a chance to actually to address a lot of the flooding situations, because a lot of the water comes down to there. So, so we can do some good things for the whole city down there. This is we just saw it like in June or July. And so everybody is actively looking for feedback. The plan is taking about 2 years to put together. So there's that website, you can go on there, you can come talk at city council meetings. We'll be discussing it. So this is the time to give input. However, don't give it to me. The federal, what is it? The Fair Political Practices Act has, the lawyers there have discovered that I live too close to be able to vote or influence whatsoever. I'm within 500 feet. So I can give you, I know, I even asked twice. It's like, please, it's like 17 feet too. Like I'm right there. So what they said no. So I can give you all the information you want about it, but don't talk to me because I can't do anything. The folks I would maybe suggest is talk to Robin, who's a council member. She knows this area because she was a principal at Nesbitt, so she's pretty familiar here. Or Julia.
Again, so we just got forced to go to district elections because, the California, fair elections laws, there hadn't been a rep from East Belmont in 40 years. But now we have one, but you're not allowed to say anything about projects we care about because you live too close to
So
something.
I know it's wild, right? So the lawsuit that was forcing, I believe in districting, but there was a lawsuit that came through and was forcing districting was from a different entity.
Yeah, it was from an outside lawyer.
Yeah.
I know, but
Right.
like he's applying the California equal opportunity.
So one of the ideas for folks who didn't like the idea of districting was that it really will impact a district representative's ability to speak to all of the issues in their district, because you can't be within 500 feet. So it's an interesting moment to learn about city government, right? So like, let's say somebody is thinking about being a planning commissioner or a city council member, and if there's just really one issue, which is the thing that's really important for them, well, make sure you don't live 500 feet within that issue, because then you're not gonna be able to have influence on it. And these fair practice laws just passed a really long time ago.
So that applies to planning commissioners as well?
Yes, yeah, so I had to recuse myself from things that if they were being built too close to me. Yeah, and luckily nobody on the council, for example, right now lives too close to Stanford, but like when Warren was on the council, he was too close to have any influence on Stanford. So it's, I get it. They don't want me to feel like they want council members who can be objective, but on the other hand, there's some things that make it difficult. So, but the good news is, the way our Belmont has worked districts is that you're elected from an area, but you are responsible for the whole city. So, again, I think Robin's probably a really good person to talk to because she knows the area. Julia has been involved for a long time in this, but both Davina and Tom would also be great. So yeah, it's interesting, right? And speaking of Stanford around the cities, I mean, you guys have all heard Stanford is eyeing Belmont. They do want to use it for continued academic use. But as well as some community benefits would be restoring Ralston Mansion, which would be great. I got married there, and letting NGNU stay on campus, which is great because I got my degrees from there. So it would be nice to have that back. But for any small business owners, the Belmont Chamber of Commerce used to be its own thing, but now we have joined with the Chamber of San Mateo, which is a much more resourced, much more networked organization. So there are lots of events, and they tend to work really well with nonprofits, government, education, and businesses. So San Mateo County actually is really amazing at everybody kind of pulling and working together. So I would highly recommend it. And then Park and Rec department, believe it or not, we win awards there too. Just tons of classes and resources. So, so check it out. I, of course, want to mention opportunities for leadership. Your neighborhood is extraordinarily lucky to have Carrie and the whole team as being in charge, right? I mean, I really totally wild. You guys, like, you guys could run a seminar on how to be a functional neighborhood association. And that's something like our district is different than the other districts in Belmont because we have strong neighborhood associations. And I think that's great because we can get information in and out and get suggestions in and out. So that's awesome. So if there's any way for you all to help Carrie, do it. That's an opportunity for leadership. City of Belmont, right now there actually is an opening. I think it's still, I think that this opening is still until October for the Measure I committee. That's kind of manages the money that we use on roads and things like that. One of the members passed away, so it's an open position and is waiting to be filled. Planning Commission and Park and Rec will have openings again. Usually that happens in January. I did successfully apply for a planning commission. So if anybody is interested in doing that and wants me to sit down with you and help you with your application, or, you know, like practice interview questions, I'm happy to do that.
There's a question. I just want to make sure you saw.
Oh, I didn't. Okay. Let me just give me 1 second, Tommy. I'm going to answer that in a second. The County of San Mateo also has some really amazing commissions that I've just learned about. So behavioral health, bicycle and pedestrian advisory, domestic violence, arts commission, uplifting women commission, like, so, and they always need people. So apply. And again, I'm happy to help with that. So that is an amazing question. If we do move forward, my guess is that it would become part of District 1.
Can I ask about that? I know at a recent San Mateo County Commission meeting, there was some discussion about the harbor industrial area, and some commissioners made some remarks that implied they didn't want Belmont to annex it. I'm wondering if you know that there were remarks about, they were presenting plans for biotech, and one of the commissioners was like, oh, that's a terrible idea. We should keep it for the county to put housing in to account for our RINA. And so I'm wondering if you know if that tension is being resolved, or are there any serious obstacles to annexing?
So the county seems to be on, you know, with us on it. It seems like they're like, sure, yeah, let's do this.
Too, like, let's
Yeah.
talk about working with the staff and stuff. That's why I was really surprised to see these remarks by that commissioner.
They may just be a lone wolf, you know, because it's all been very friendly and very much like, let's do the best thing for the folks who are down here, and probably the best thing is being incorporated.
Yeah, I didn't realize the county has their own RINA they have to meet in their unincorporated areas, which is really weird. Like, why do we need more housing in unincorporated areas?
And then
apparently
and part of the difficulty is like, they don't run infrastructure the same way that the city does. So, I mean, the city is actually, you know, the city and the county work really well together, but like, there are things that we're doing that the county is paying us to do because the city has resources to do it and the county doesn't. Our county supervisors are great. So for this area, it's Noelia, and Noelia and I just held a meeting with residents in that area on Saturday at the Little Belmont Cafe. They have very good fries in there. And then the other supervisor is Ray Mueller, and he's on the south side and kind of from El Camino up. No other city is cut in half. It's just us. But that means we have two county supervisors to ask for money. So that's great for the city. I think that's everything.
Do they think about taking everything on Harbor away from Old County to the Bay Shore? I mean, to build the housing and the life sciences.
So nobody's going to be forced to sell property or move or it basically would kind of stay as it is. We could annex it if we all decide that this is a good idea and we move forward with it. And then developers would come in and talk if they
And try and get people to move or change things.
Yeah.
Because of the Belmont Cafe, the freeway entrance, because of the gas stations up on Old County and the veterinary hospital that a lot of us have used.
yeah,
Places that make a neighborhood,
yeah.
you know, I hate to see it leave.
Yeah, and much of that will stay. And there's some areas though, like the Flyers, that Flyers over on Harbor Place, I mean, that's okay if we redo that, right? And then,
We use it. We
No,
use it and
question
use
is,
another.
And I brought this up to some people, there's only 3 commercial fueling stations within 30 miles of here.
Yeah.
If you take a truck and trailer to fuel,
that's interesting.
there's only 3.
Within
One is in San Leandro, one is in Milpitas, and one is in San Jose. If you close this one here, you don't have one.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
That's right. I wanna think about it,
Yeah,
because no place can accommodate the weight and the size. If you drive in there, you see all those gravel trucks and all that stuff. They go there, and the tax revenue from it is tremendous.
yeah.
I mean, you wanna keep the little gas station across the street, but probably 20-30 times the tax revenue generated by this one place.
Well, the good news and bad news around it is the city's not in charge of what the property owners decide to do.
Yeah,
So there's no eminent domain, none of that's gonna
Yeah,
happen.
that's
There's
a
lot of
pretty,
things.
having that fuel resource.
That's interesting.
And if you close that and then they're gonna build this here, then they have to bring tanker trucks in to fuel the vehicles that are building the front.
I see.
Oh,
It actually,
Yeah,
well, they
transition
kind
is
of really
tricky.
needs to be.
Yeah.
so that doesn't require tanker truck to fill that place up?
Oh, no, it does.
It doesn't?
But if you close that, how do you fuel these other vehicles?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, you have to drive it.
So property owners have the option.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but right, I mean, this is the tricky stuff with the transition. Absolutely. Yeah, so some of the things too, with some of the developers we've already, started talking is to create more green space. So one of the biotech companies that we've been talking to, who we're convincing to repair the creek, we're working on it. Also, is really interested in uplifting artists. So they're gonna talking about creating an art walk, like cleaning up the creek and then creating an art walk with different, which is gonna be beautiful. And then connect that also with the downtown. So transition is hard, but sometimes some beautiful things will come out of it. And what was cool is they found an artist that was trained right at Notre Dame in the mirror to uplift. That was really
Can you talk about in that area, the mobile home park and where it fits with things that are going on too, just because it's a pocket of like super affordable housing.
Right.
People have relied on for a long time.
right. So right now, so we met with a number of folks from the mobile home park. And we're obviously concerned about how much flooding happens to them all of the time, and it's not right. It's always the most vulnerable population, right, that suffers. They are at the intersection of, so they're on the unincorporated land. Part of their land is Caltrans because they're right under the freeway. The owners are, it's a private organization, private couple that owns it, so they're actually on private land, and the street over here, O'Neill, is the only part of the city that touches it. And so what happens is, you know, everybody else thinks that somebody else is taking care of them, and whose responsibility really is what. And there's some litigation happening around all of that, so I have to be a little careful about the things that I'm saying out loud. Yeah, when they need help, we just figure out ways to help them, right? You know, of course. So right now, that area, even if it's annexed, will be zoned both residential and commercial, and light industrial. So depending on what the private owners want to do, is what they want to do. But Noelle and I talked about, you know, working together to reach out more communication to them and make sure that they feel heard and part of the process of like, what's your expertise? What would you like to see when you annex? Yeah, some places, yeah, we have a lot of storage companies. And any questions? So I'm open for that. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah, was that enough? You got any?
That was fun. Are there any other questions?
I think I probably shouldn't open this can of worms, but there was some questions around biotech and biosafety levels and things like that. And I've done I've been doing a lot of research and a lot of digging, and it's actually interesting because biosafety level 3 is already allowed in every city. There are currently companies near us that are doing biosafety level 3 because they are regulated by other agencies. They're regulated kind of like the FDA regulates, or the Food and Drug, or that is the Food and Drug, but so it's regulated by federal agencies and other agencies. So the way that the topic has been broached is, will you allow it, or, you know, do we allow this in our communities? But really, really the question is, are we going to ban it because it is already here, right? And it's already being regulated. The only city in the entire Bay Area that has said we are going to ban it is San Carlos.
We're gonna ban?
Yeah.
Yes. The only other city that has said anything besides, like, you know, it's a business that's being regulated by other agencies is Fremont. That's the next closest that has done something. And Fremont just says conditional use permit. And what that means is you can do it. We just want to know where you're at. So that if we just want to know where you're at as an extra level. So those are kind of the things that I think are, as the council continues to kind of explore these biosafety levels, the acknowledgement that, I mean, this has been happening. These companies have been in existence and functioning forever, like since South City. Oh, sure. So, so biosafety level 3. So, I mean, maybe, did you want to speak to it a little bit? What happens in biotech or no?
Yeah, I can. So I'm a research scientist. I've worked in labs. I've worked at Gilead for years. I'm at Genentech now. So the biosafety levels are related primarily to how the pathogens are transmitted, and then partly to how serious or deadly they are. So Gilead, you might be familiar, researches HIV and has medicines for HIV, for example, and that has to be handled in a biosafety level 2+. So HIV is not easily transmittable, but it's very serious if you catch it. Then there's other things that are more easily transmissible, but not that serious, like let's say a respiratory virus. So the different levels go with the seriousness of the pathogen. Biosafety level 4 is incredibly rare and is only done by the federal government,
Yeah.
like a few sites around the whole country. So forget that. That's
Right.
like the bull. Nobody does that around here. Okay, not happening.
Right.
So biosafety level 3 would be something like tuberculosis, COVID-19, actually, I think,
Yeah.
because it's so transmissible. So personally, I've never worked at anything above BSL 2+, which was HIV and hepatitis B. So I'm not familiar with anybody doing BSL 3 around here, but I wouldn't necessarily know.
Yeah, so there are a few companies, and BSL 3, from what I've learned, is that they kind of come in and they come out because the research is very specific. So they'll be somewhere, they'll finish the research, and then they're done, and then the company moves on. And they don't necessarily have to announce themselves either, because if it's I don't want to say secret research. What's the better way to say that? Like if it's,
It's proprietary.
thank you.
Yeah, it's considered a commercial secret, like the Coke formula is proprietary, right?
Yeah.
So companies will keep some of the research secret.
So a lot of times it's just not advertised. So there's stuff that's happening and has been happening all around us and has been regulated by other agencies. So one of the questions that also comes up is as a city, is it appropriate for us to really regulate it? And what does that look like in terms of enforcement, right? Like, so there's a lot of questions, and that conversation is happening. So if that's something that's interesting to you, keep your eyes out for city council and agendas. But we are doing due diligence. We're talking to Fremont, and we're talking to South San Francisco to see how they've managed it. South San Francisco has been really, if I'm honest, really kind of happy about how that's all been managed down there by the agencies. So
Big complex out there. And that Coyote Point or whatever that is,
Oysters, yeah, it's huge.
I think that too. I think so.
Oh my God, there's trains, there's like 10-story buildings going up everywhere. Yeah.
well, that's where you got that.
Yeah, that's it.
Genetic has been amazing for the city of South City. I mean, that is a different location, different place now. Yes.
So, you know, one thing that came up, I think it was before you arrived, was a question about coordination around all the flood. Around all the flooding projects for the different developers.
Can you say one more? I got distracted by sushi because I haven't had dinner yet. So are we going to sushi? Is that what's happening? I'm so sorry. Go ahead. Yes. Is it open?
So before you came, I think there was a question about the different developments have all mentioned sea level rise or flooding plans that they're trying to make. And so a question that we had asked them was who's coordinating those different efforts?
Right.
And they mentioned one shoreline and
Right.
how they align with that. And I'm guessing that the city's kind of the one doing most of that coordination, but can you talk a little bit about that, or would you have some insight on that? Just because it was a question that came up earlier.
Yeah. So One Shoreline is the organization that's coordinating across the county and across the states, because water doesn't know what city ends where, it just goes where it goes. So that organization has been great in terms of keeping communication between cities and the county open. They've just recently come out with guidelines that each city can adopt. Like, these are the things that we recommend every city do to manage flooding and storm drainage. And then I think we're all feeling it, especially down here. I mean, the people up the hill have their own issues, right? The eucalyptus trees are falling on their heads, right? So they have some issues with flooding too, but down here we definitely feel it. And so I think that was part of the impetus of all of us saying, hey, we really need a master plan for the city of Belmont. So Public Works is kind of looking at all the data, looking at One Shoreline, talking with the county, and putting together a comprehensive plan of like, how do we deal with storm drainage? The funding for storm drainage is tricky because there is no dedicated property tax for it. So we get property taxes for fixing sewers, but storm drainage doesn't have any source of funding other than whatever we pull out of the general fund to try to manage it. But it's a very large thing with sea rise and climate change. So we're trying to figure out ways of being able to not only know the right things to do, but to find funding to do it. You would think that the city has a lot of money, but they don't. There's a lot of stuff to get done.
And then one other question,
And the state keeps taking our money. We had to fight to get some money back from them.
oh,
Yeah, there was there's this vehicle license fee that you all pay
yeah.
that usually comes to the city. And the state was like, oh, we'll just collect it for you this year and then we'll give it back to you. And everybody's like, okay. And then the state was like, we're gonna keep it. And then the cities got mad and fought. And they were like, well, this year you can have it back. So we don't know what's going to happen next year. But if we don't get it, that's $10 million over the next 5 years out of our budget. It is a lot of money. And it's kind of mean. I'm sorry, Carrie, what's your question?
So then the other thing that came to mind when you were giving updates was about the sewer laterals. And I remember a while back that there was an effort when there was all the planned repaving on the street, and we started It looks beautiful, the new pavement that we have, on part of Hiller right now. But I recall that there was a big issue where when they knew that there was gonna be a lot of repaving of the streets, there was an effort by the city to review everybody's sewer lateral to try to make sure that those changes occurred before,
Yeah.
so that they weren't then tearing up the street. And
Right.
so I was just wondering, because there's so much going on with our streets now between the development and all the repaving. I haven't actually heard much in terms of like whether that's a coordination that we as a neighborhood need to do with the city.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Because we had to help people understand why it was their responsibility. Was a big part of it, and this was this was when the neighborhood association was very early on. But in terms of that coordination, I remember we even coordinated in terms of trying to get a group rate on getting all the laterals repaired.
That's an amazing
But
idea.
in terms of, like, just again, I saw the portion of the street, and then as we were talking about sewer laterals, I was like, wait, we didn't hear about like any.
Yeah, I was really
coordination.
surprised too. I was expecting to hear like, oh my gosh, I have to redo this new lateral.
Yeah.
And nobody noticed. It's like they didn't
Yeah.
look.
Yeah, so it's just a question, because the last time there was such a big plan that like, yeah, the city's gonna go out and proactively do the inspection of every lateral for all the streets where this is gonna occur.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I just wanted to bring it up.
yeah, it's
because,
great. Mhm.
If there's coordination, we should do it soon.
Yeah, for sure, because if I,
Yeah, 'cause they already, it seems here, we put in all that fiber and then they repave, so it's like it's a done deal. Somebody finds out your lateral is broken now,
Yeah.
and have to dig up all that.
Here,
extra
you can-
pavement.
yeah, but the good news is that they have the newer the pavement, the higher the standards for if you dig into it. You have to restore it to its old glory,
Oh,
or the city won't pass it. So that's a nice thing. They can't do a patch job on a new thing. It needs to look beautiful, which made me feel better.
what Karen was saying. The fiber that's coming through the neighborhood, I was talking to the construction guys, and they said that it was being paid for by Amazon. Amazon's putting that fiber. They're coming from Gilroy, and they're going all the way up to South City.
whoa.
And they have right now little quadrants of land, like he said, that by Burlingame, they're doing it. They just finished some in Redwood City, but they have to go back to Redwood City. So there are 7 of these big plastic tubes that they're sticking in the ground.
Right.
And everywhere you have a water line or electric line or PG&E line, they have a little manhole cover, I'll call it, just a little round thing, it's probably 12 inches. And it goes down, I don't know why they need to go down there. And then they have these big manhole covers
Mhm.
that are probably every 30 feet. So, Sterling View, street I live on.
Yeah.
Was hit with 2 manhole covers, and we've been having construction for the last 2 weeks. But I was never notified that that was coming our way. Now, one day I saw the signs and I called up, the planning commission, the permit office, and I said, what are they doing here?
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing. So the lady called me back and she goes, I don't know what they're doing.
But it's a
And
private
I thought,
organization.
"Okay." So then I called Karen and she goes, oh, what they're doing is they're putting in, this fiber.
Yeah.
So today, when I was talking to the construction guys, they're going to repave Hiller all the way up to Sterling View, up to Old County. They're gonna repave the whole street. How do I know that without even talking to these guys?
So the private company should have given you notice. So
Zero.
that's,
They-
okay.
they do-
I got a letter on my street because I had manholes too. Okay, so let me talk to our public works because they have to notify you. And if they're not doing that, then they can get on their case.
No,
Yeah, I remember Chris had contacted me, so of course I forwarded over to Peter, and then once we got the information, then we did send it.
That's
out
why
to
you did the
neighborhood,
outreach.
But that was the way that we distributed the information.
Okay, thank God for Terry. Okay, so Public Works, the notifications of
But I was surprised.
the lines.
Like, we got letters on Yorkshire, but they're not tearing up Yorkshire, so we couldn't notice to figure out why.
And your Sterling View,
Yeah, like the, the pools and the 364, like, that was the letter. But they're not tearing up Yorkshire, so why did I get the letter? It doesn't make any sense.
what's her name again?
Chris Holly.
Chris?
Everything.
What street, can I say that Sterling View people didn't get it? Can I just tell them that a resident on Sterling View? Okay.
People I asked, they didn't get it. So yes, you may.
Okay. And I love the idea of like doing a push.
Sorry, you need to run.
Okay.
I love the location, wherever it.
Thank
Thank you so much. Very nice.
Nice seeing you. And then that maybe, so if I look at the timeline, right, there is still time to do, especially in some of the smaller streets in Sterling Downs that aren't planned yet. That's a great idea to,
It's just the coordination. It
yeah,
was back when Ashton was there, right? And so we had coordinated around it, but it was just hitting me as we were talking about people's laterals, and I was like, God, we didn't coordinate, and there's like the repaving already has started. And
It's a
so
great
I
idea.
think the city didn't inspect it, so I'm guessing, because nobody got letters that they're
That could be what it was.
displaced. Because the first time it was the city notifying everybody.
That's
your
right.
laterals.
The city was gonna do the
slurry.
slurry,
right.
and that was the whole reason, and so the city, was proactive, and then we worked on that, but
It sounds
yeah, don't know about the coordination.
It sounds like that would be a cool thing to bring back. I mean, if the city did it before and it works, then that would be a good thing to bring back.
Maybe it's not happening this time because it's AT&T or Amazon.
That's doing.
Why Amazon has to get it? They don't do it.
They're gonna run the world.
That's just like knocking on a door trying to get us to sign up there.
No, thanks. I'll ask
But
Peter
yeah,
about it.
thank you, yeah, and if it's helpful, I can give
Is
some
it?
background, but it's just the coordination, because it totally made sense. When we coordinated that, like, okay, you don't wanna ruin
Right.
all.
I mean, I know that Peter is really wanting to get the sewer laterals done, so if this helps get the word out for people. I can't imagine him. And our staffing is up again. We were down by like 40% at City Hall, and so maybe we have more staffing now.
So I will say that it does come with meeting to explain to people why it's their responsibility. And some people refuse to have this, because once they inspect it, then they have to know that it's an issue.
And then they have to fix it, and they're not cheap.
Correct, and so I think I'm willing to work with Peter to kind of help frame it for the city folks, and that we did try to get a group rate on sewer lateral repairs to help adjust some of the cost. And that was something
Good to know.
I coordinated
Okay,
for the neighborhood, so I can neighbors with that helps.
that's great. I'll have a conversation with them on
Yeah.
Tuesday.
And then any other questions for Gina? I know it's late.
I think I'm happy to take any questions, but the additional thing on sewer laterals is it's not just good for the city, it's also good for the homeowner. Like my auntie, her sewer lateral failed because she just didn't know she was supposed to check it, and there were large amounts of poop in her yard that, so if your sewer laterals don't work, that means the poop does not make it to the sewer. Yeah.
These Sterling Downs, they were all made what they call Orangeburg pipe.
Yeah, and that's not,
I had my place about 10 years ago.
because it's past its life. Yeah. Okay,
It's cardboard.
you guys have been awesome. I am aware it's late, but okay, we're done.
So, all right, we're gonna wrap up the meeting, and I apologize, so usually we have time for everyone to share who's here, get to know each other. But I want to give a big shout out to Matt for inviting us here to St. Mark. So, St. Mark is such an asset in our community, right? Yeah.
With the approval of pastor.
I would love it. The last time I think that our neighborhood was here was to celebrate the retirement of Ray the postman. And that was quite an extraordinary celebration that we had here. So, really, really appreciate you opening the doors here, Matt, like literally opening the doors, and we could to make this happen. So again, thanks to everybody for coming. We will in the future try to have more connection time too for neighbors. So for those who are here, just because you guys couldn't really see who was here, the people who were online, we had, it was between 5 and 8 at different times I saw. So we had Joe, Joanne, who's there. We can just do a quick so that everyone can say hi and kind of keep in track. Joanne, who's been to a lot of our meetings, if you want to say hello. And Ken, who's come to a lot of meetings. And I don't know if it's Nahum or Nahum, if you want to unmute, but I think you're new, so welcome. And then Tommy, who's Tayshawn's other half, who hopefully has dinner ready now, is my understanding, right? And then for those of you who are at home, so that you guys know this beautiful space that we're in, because part of having a speaker is you couldn't see everybody. And so we have Tayshawn, we have Michael, who's here on this side of the Belmont, or of Sterling Downs. And we have Joanne, who's always keeping us on track to what's going on in Planning Commission. There's Matt, Lucette, and I didn't have a chance to meet you guys yet. Mike and Susan. And this is one of your first meetings, right?
Right, but we've been here a long time. We've been getting your periodicals and we want you on Zoom.
Deliver the letter.
Yay, thank you. Yes. And of course, Chris from Sterling View. We're just introducing so that people can see each other. So anyway, that about, I think, wraps up the meeting. Thank you again to Councilmember Latimerlo for joining us. And then we will be in touch for our next meeting. Thank you all. Encourage your neighbors to continue participating. Have a good night. Everybody, thank you.